Get out of the pool, hands where we can see them. That's not exactly what you expect to hear while enjoying a peaceful morning swim in your own backyard. But that's how my Sunday began. One second I was floating in calm blue water, admiring how the sunlight danced across the surface. The next I was staring down the barrels of 3 drawn guns. I'm Kyle Brooks, 65, recently retired, and proud owner of what was supposed to be my dream home. My wife Linda had just set down her iced tea when the police stormed through our gate. Sirens still echoed, neighbors peeked over fences, and standing at the center of the chaos, smug as ever, was Piper Cox, our self-appointed HOA president. She was shouting that I was a dangerous trespasser on my own property. Before I tell you how this insanity spiraled out of control, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Don't forget to hit subscribe because this story gets unbelievably wild. When Linda and I first pulled into Willow Creek Estates with the moving truck, it felt like the American dream had finally come true. Wide, clean streets, manicured lawns, white fences, and a glistening lake just down the road, everything looked like a postcard. After decades of working long shifts and saving every penny, we'd found a place where we could finally slow down. The house wasn't brand new, but it was solid brick walls, big backyard, a pool that caught the morning sun just right. For 2 people in their 60s, it felt like winning the lottery. We spent the first few weeks unpacking, planting flowers, and meeting a few friendly neighbors, the Parkers across the street, a sweet, retired couple who brought us pie, and the Millers' young parents, with 2 toddlers who loved throwing balls over our fence by accident. Everyone seemed welcoming. Everyone, except one. Across the street stood Piper Cox, the kind of woman who made HOA president sound like a military rank. She was always out front, clipboard in hand, scanning the street like a hawk looking for its next violation. She had the permanent squint of someone suspicious that joy itself might be breaking a rule. The first time we met her, I was pruning the hedges when she walked up, heels clicking on the driveway like gunshots. "Good morning," I greeted, wiping sweat from my forehead. She didn't smile. "You must be the new homeowners," she said, looking me up and down, like I'd just wandered in from the wrong neighborhood. "That's right," I said. "Kyle and Linda Brooks. Moved here from Street Lewis. We love the area already." She murmured, glancing at the garden. "Well, just so you know, the HOA has very specific landscaping standards. We like things uniform here." "Uniform?" I chuckled. "I'll try to keep the roses from forming a union then." She didn't laugh. Not even a hint of a smile. That's when I realized Piper Cox wasn't the friendly suburban neighbor type. She was the self-appointed guardian of community aesthetics, the enforcer of imaginary rules. The next week she sent us a printed welcome letter, except it wasn't really a welcome. It was 5 pages of HOA regulations she'd highlighted in yellow, with handwritten notes in the margins, like trim tree to 6 feet max height, and pool lights must not exceed 300 lumens. Who even measures that? Linda thought it was funny at first. She just takes her job seriously, she said. But I'd seen that kind of authority obsession before, the kind that starts with garden gossip and ends with police tape. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I waved to her every morning. She rarely waved back. Once, when I was checking the mailbox, she stopped her car, rolled down the window, and said, "You know, Mr. Brooks, most residents here prefer neutral tones for their exterior furniture. That red umbrella stands out." I looked at the bright red umbrella by our pool and smiled. "That's the idea, Piper. I like color. Makes the place feel alive." Her face tightened. "This isn't that kind of neighborhood." Then she rolled her window up and drove off. I remember thinking, what kind of neighborhood is it then? It wasn't long before her small remarks turned into little acts of control. We'd get reminder notes about leaving trash bins out for more than 12 hours, about watering schedules, even about noise levels, which according to Piper included my lawnmower. She once told Linda, "HOA guidelines suggest electric mowers to reduce sound pollution." Linda just blinked. Sound pollution. We lived next to a highway, Piper. It wasn't the sound that bothered her. It was us. See, Piper Cox had lived in Willow Creek since it was built 15 years ago. Rumor had it she practically ran the HOA before there even was an HOA. She was used to being obeyed, to everyone tiptoeing around her sharp tongue. When we arrived, 2 newcomers who didn't care about her rules, it probably felt like an invasion. One afternoon I was cleaning the pool when she appeared again, this time holding a clipboard and her phone like she was on patrol. She didn't even bother saying hello. "You know, she started HOA requires you to submit an approval form for pool renovations." "I didn't renovate anything," I replied. "Just cleaned it." "Well, it looks different. The watercolor changed." "That's called chlorine, Piper." Her lips tightened again. "You don't need to be snarky, Mr. Brooks. We have a community standard to maintain." I smiled. And I'm maintaining it. Sparkling clean. She left without another word, but the next morning, an envelope was taped to my door. Notice of potential HOA violation. Linda sighed. She's testing you. Yeah, I said, crumpling it. And I'm not playing. For a while, things went quiet. Or maybe I'd just learned to tune her out. We hosted a small barbecue for a few neighbors one weekend. Everything was perfect: laughter, burgers, music at a reasonable volume. But halfway through, Piper marched over furious. This gathering wasn't authorized, she barked. Authorized, Piper? It's a barbecue, not a protest. You didn't request guest parking permits. There's space on my driveway. Rules are rules, she snapped. That was the first time I saw the look, that glint in her eyes that said she wasn't just enforcing policy. She enjoyed the power trip. That night I told Linda, I've met HOA presidents before. But this one, she's not enforcing order. She's enforcing ego. Still, I didn't expect her obsession to reach the level of calling the police. The day before the pool incident, I'd noticed Piper watching us from her upstairs window while I was trimming the hedges. When our mail came late, she walked across and said, "Strange how often delivery delays happen lately. Maybe it's a sign the HOA should handle community mail." What I laughed. You want to control the post office now. She didn't answer, just walked off, muttering something about outsiders, not understanding how things work here. Outsiders. I remember that word sticking in my mind. It wasn't just about property or rules. It was about who she thought belonged in a neighborhood like this and who didn't. That night, I checked my security cameras and installed 2 new ones, pointing toward the fence line. Something in my gut told me Piper wasn't done. Linda teased me for being paranoid, but she didn't stop me either. Better safe than sorry, she said. The next morning, I woke early, slipped into the pool, and let the cool water wash away the tension of the week. Linda brought her book and sat by the patio, the golden light spilling over everything. For a moment, life felt normal again, until the sirens came. It was so sudden, loud, shrill, echoing through the cul-de-sac. 3 police cruisers skidded to a halt in front of our gate. I froze mid-stroke, water dripping from my face as the officers ran in with their weapons drawn. "Get out of the pool," one shouted. "Hands where we can see them," Linda screamed. "What's happening?" I slowly raised my hands. "Officers, I live here. This is my home." And then I saw her standing at the end of her driveway, phone in hand, lips curled into that satisfied smirk. Piper Cox. She'd finally gone from clipboard to 911. That's when I realized this wasn't just an annoying HOA conflict anymore. It was something darker, something personal. The police officer's voice thundered again across my backyard. "Sir, step out of the pool now. Keep your hands visible." For a moment I didn't move. The water felt colder than before, and my brain scrambled to make sense of what was happening. My wife Linda was yelling from the patio, "He lives here. This is our house," but the officers barely acknowledged her. 3 of them had fanned out, 2 in the yard, 1 covering the gate. They looked tense, confused, and ready for anything. Their hands trembled slightly around their weapons. And standing right behind them, wearing that smug, self-righteous grin, was Piper Cox, her phone still in her hand, her hair perfectly in place as if she'd just finished a magazine photo shoot titled Suburban Justice. I raised my voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "My name is Kyle Brooks. This is my property. I can show you my ID and the deed inside the house. But for now, I'm keeping my hands right here." The lead officer, Officer Daniels, glanced at the others, motioning for them to lower their aim slightly but stay alert. "Sir," he said, "we received a call about a trespasser who was reportedly armed and acting suspiciously." Armed, I scoffed, gesturing at my soaked swim trunks. "Unless my floaties are considered weapons, I think someone's pulling your leg." One of the younger officers, Reyes, blinked awkwardly. I could tell he was already piecing things together. Piper, however, wasn't done with her performance. She stepped forward, voice shrill and theatrical. "That's him. He's been using the pool all morning." "I told you, officers, he doesn't belong here, ma'am," Daniel said patiently. "Do you have proof that this man isn't the homeowner?" Her jaw tightened. "Proof. Look at him." You could feel the entire yard freeze. Even Officer Daniel's expression changed, a mixture of disbelief and irritation. He knew exactly what kind of call this was now. I sighed. "Officer, if you'd follow me to the porch, I can grab my ID and the deed. You'll also see our mail with my name and our security cameras, which recorded me unlocking the back gate this morning." Daniels nodded. "All right, Mr. Brooks. Slow movements, please." As I walked out of the pool, dripping wet, Piper kept shouting nonsense behind me. "He's lying. I saw him jump the fence last week. This house was on the market not long ago. He must have broken in after the sale." Linda stormed forward, trembling but furious. "Piper, that's enough. You've seen us here every day since we moved in." But Piper just folded her arms, her nose lifted in defiance. HOA records don't show a transfer yet, until I see official documentation he's trespassing. We reach the porch, and I handed Officer Daniels my wallet and the thick folder with our purchase papers. The man scanned them, compared names, addresses, signatures. Then quietly, he sighed and handed everything back. "All right, Mr. Brooks," he said. "You're good. I apologize for the disturbance. We'll clear out." Piper's mouth fell open. "Wait, what? You're just gonna let him go?" Daniel's tone hardened. "Ma'am, this man owns this property. You need to return to your home immediately." Her face flushed red. "You don't understand. He's dangerous." "People like him," Ma'am Daniels interrupted. "You are dangerously close to committing a false report. Do you understand what that means?" I'll never forget the silence that followed. You could hear the soft buzz of cicadas, the water trickling in the pool filter, and Piper's ego deflating like a balloon with a slow leak. She turned sharply, muttering something under her breath, and stormed off toward her house. But even as she disappeared behind her gate, I could feel her gaze burning through the hedges. When the police cars finally left, Linda came to me shaking slightly. "Kyle, that could have gone so wrong," she whispered. "I know," I said quietly, looking at the fading tire marks in the driveway. All because of her paranoia, or worse. That night, neither of us slept much. Every sound outside made Linda jump. I kept replaying the moment those guns were aimed at me. I'd seen that look before, the split second, where fear mixes with authority and bad things happen. We were lucky, very lucky. The next morning, I decided to check the security footage. Sure enough, Piper had been pacing her backyard for nearly half an hour before the cops arrived. She was on the phone the entire time, gesturing angrily toward our house. She'd even zoomed in with her phone camera, filming me swimming, as if collecting evidence. I saved the clip, labeled it "Insurance," "Paranoid Neighbor," and backed it up in 2 drives. I didn't want to believe she'd escalate again, but something told me that woman wasn't done. Over the next few days, she tried to act like nothing happened, but her version of normal was a tight-lipped scowl and fake politeness. She left sticky notes on our mailbox that said, "HOA reminder, pool safety inspections required annually." She even sent an email from the HOA board warning that property violations may result in penalties. Funny thing is, when I checked with the actual HOA office, they told me there was no President Piper Cox. She wasn't even officially part of the board anymore. She'd been voted out 2 years ago after some misunderstandings. Linda and I just looked at each other and laughed in disbelief. "So she's just pretending to be in charge," Linda said. "Apparently so," I replied. "Queen without a kingdom." But I knew better than to underestimate someone like Piper. People who lose power often get desperate to feel it again. 2 weeks later, I caught her taking pictures of our backyard fence. I walked over calmly. "Morning, Piper. Can I help you with something?" She startled, then tried to recover her composure. "Routine documentation. HOA perimeter survey. Didn't know we were surveying fences now." "Well, we have to ensure property boundaries are respected." I smirked. "You mean the boundaries you crossed when you called the cops on me?" Her eyes narrowed. "You think this is over, Mr. Brooks. I think it should have never started." I turned and walked away before she could answer. That night, Linda said, "She's obsessed with you, Kyle. You need to be careful." "I'm more worried about her obsession with authority," I said. "People like her, they can't stand being ignored." I was right. 2 mornings later, while watering the garden, I found a letter taped to our door. No envelope, just a handwritten note in blocky, angry letters. "You might have fooled the police, but you don't belong here. HOA will take care of it." Linda wanted to call the cops immediately, but I told her to wait. Let's see how far she's willing to go. I'm documenting everything. I added more cameras around the fence line, hidden ones this time. For a brief while, she vanished again, as if retreating to plan her next move. The neighborhood went quiet, almost too quiet. Then one Sunday afternoon, as Linda and I hosted our daughter and grandkids for lunch by the pool, I caught movement near the hedge, a flash of blonde hair, the glint of something metallic. "Linda," I said softly, "take the kids inside." "What is it? Just do it." As they hurried in, I saw Piper retreating behind her fence. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling she was gearing up for something bigger, something dangerous. And I was right, because the next Sunday, she didn't just peek over the fence, she climbed it, with a gun. For a short while after that terrifying pool incident, the neighborhood seemed calm again. Too calm, like the uneasy silence after a thunderstorm when you can still smell rain in the air, but no, the lightning isn't done yet. I told myself Piper Cox had learned her lesson. Maybe the embarrassment of being corrected by the police in front of the entire cul-de-sac would make her finally back off. But if there's one thing I've learned about people who crave power, especially the suburban kind, it's that they don't retreat quietly. They regroup. 2 days later, I woke to find a yellow envelope tucked under my door. The heading in bold: HOA violation notice. Urgent. The problem, according to the letter, my backyard lighting was non-compliant with HOA aesthetic standards. I couldn't help but laugh. My backyard lighting consisted of 4 solar lamps bought from Home Depot that barely lit the bushes. Linda sighed as she read it. "She's at it again," she murmured. "You should ignore her." "Can't," I said, holding the letter up. This one's actually signed by her acting HOA President P. Cox, acting president of what her imagination, that became a running joke between Linda and me. We called her President Piper of the Republic of Paranoia. Still, something about that fake official letter rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't just annoyance anymore, it was the deliberate attempt to intimidate. She was using the HOA name to create fear, to make us feel like outsiders in our own home. The next morning, when I went to get the mail, she was already outside pretending to water her plants. She looked up and gave me the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Mr. Brooks," she called out sweetly. "I hope you got my note. We're trying to keep the neighborhood uniform. Wouldn't want to drag property values down, you understand." I gave her a long, calm look. "You mean your property values, Piper?" Her smile thinned. "The HOA has standards." "Right," I said, "and you have issues." Her face twisted, and for a moment I thought she might throw the watering can at me. Instead, she spun around and stormed back inside. Linda scolded me gently later. "You shouldn't provoke her." "I didn't provoke her," I said. "I just stopped pretending she makes the rules. That's what she can't handle," Linda replied. She was right. Over the next week, Piper began her campaign of passive-aggressive warfare. She started photographing our front yard every morning. I caught her crouching near the mailbox, once snapping pictures of the grass, muttering something about height variance. Another time, she walked down the sidewalk holding a measuring tape, pretending to check driveway widths. The neighbors noticed too. One afternoon, my friend Tom Parker, the old man across the street who liked tinkering with his boat, came over shaking his head. "She's been walking around with that clipboard all week," he said. "Told me my bird bath was a visual obstruction. I told her to go measure something else." I laughed, but Tom's expression turned serious. "Careful, Kyle. She's been like this before. There was a family a few years ago, mixed couple, she drove them out. Constant complaints, reports to the HOA, even filed fake noise violations. They moved within 6 months. I frowned. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "She's got a mean streak under that perfume, and she doesn't like being told she's wrong." That conversation sat heavy in my chest. Maybe Piper wasn't just a bored suburban tyrant. Maybe she was dangerous. I checked my security cameras again, all working perfectly. Every angle covered: front yard, back gate, side fence. I even set motion alerts on my phone. If she so much as breathed near my property line, I'd know. A few nights later, around 11 p.m., one of those alerts went off. The footage showed Piper walking along the edge of her yard, flashlight in hand, pointing at my fence. She lingered there for nearly 3 minutes before disappearing into the darkness. The next morning, I printed the footage and handed it to Officer Mills at the local precinct. "She's not technically trespassing yet," he said carefully, "but we'll log the report. Keep your cameras rolling. And if she steps over that fence again, call 911 immediately." I nodded. "I will. Thanks, officer." Linda tried to stay optimistic. She baked cookies for the Parkers and spent time gardening, pretending the world outside our fence didn't exist. But even she couldn't ignore the tension that hung in the air. Every time we heard a car door slam or a gate creak, she flinched. A few mornings later, we woke to find a fresh HOA warning taped to our mailbox. "Your backyard gatherings have generated noise complaints. Continued violations may result in legal action." We hadn't even had any gatherings. That's when Linda broke down crying at the breakfast table. "I just wanted to live somewhere quiet, Kyle. Somewhere normal." I reached across and took her hand. "We will, but first we're going to stand our ground." That evening, I decided to pay Piper a visit, calmly, peacefully. I walked across the street, rang her bell, and waited. When she opened the door, she looked almost pleased, as if she'd been expecting this. "Mr. Brooks," she said, crossing her arms. "If you're here to argue about the violations—" "Not here to argue," I interrupted. "Just to talk." She tilted her head. "Talk about what? About you leaving us alone?" Her eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me, I don't know what your problem is, Piper. Maybe you're bored. Maybe you miss being HOA president. But this has to stop. You've filed false complaints, harassed my wife, and called the police on me in my own pool." She smirked. "You brought that on yourself. This neighborhood has rules. You are not times the HOA," I said firmly. "You were removed 2 years ago." Her expression flickered just for a second before she recovered. Who told you that doesn't matter? What matters is that you stay off my property and out of my life. For a moment we just stared at each other. Her face was trembling slightly, eyes glassy with restrained rage. You think you can talk to me like that? You don't belong here, Brooks. People like you never do. She slammed the door in my face. I walked back home, hands shaking, jaw tight. That line, people like you, hit deeper than I expected. I'd faced prejudice before, but there was something particularly venomous about hearing it in a place you've paid for with your life's work. Linda saw my expression when I came inside. What did she say? Nothing worth repeating, I said. But I think she's done pretending to play by the rules. For the next few days, the weather turned colder. The sky stayed gray, wind rustling through the trees like whispers. Piper didn't show her face much. Maybe she was licking her wounds or plotting. Then, one Saturday afternoon, a small package arrived at our door. No return address. Inside was a printed HOA agenda titled Emergency Board Meeting Unauthorized Occupancy Discussion. Beneath the printed list of items was a handwritten note. This community will be restored to order. PC. That night I checked the footage again, around 2 a.m. She was at it once more, flashlight clipboard muttering to herself near the fence. I watched her freeze suddenly as if she'd heard something. She looked up straight into one of the cameras and smiled slow, deliberate, chilling. Then she walked away. I remember whispering to myself, this isn't over. And it wasn't. Because the next weekend, the silence would break again, not with sirens this time, but with a single terrifying sound, the click of a gun being cocked. Sunday mornings were sacred in our house. Coffee, jazz music, and Linda's famous buttermilk pancakes. After the chaos of the last few weeks, we finally had our daughter Samantha and her 2 little boys over for brunch. The sun was warm, the air smelled like maple syrup and cut grass, and for a moment, it felt like we were living a normal life again. The backyard shimmered in golden light. The boys chased each other with water guns around the pool. Linda set the table under the patio umbrella, and Sam was helping me grill. I remember thinking how peaceful everything looked, how maybe, just maybe, the storm had passed. Then came the voice. You people never learn. The sound cut through the laughter like a blade. Everyone froze. I turned toward the fence, and there she was. Piper Cox. But this time she wasn't holding a clipboard. She was holding a gun. The glint of sunlight off the steel barrel made my blood run cold. She stood on her side of the fence, at first face red hand shaking slightly. I warned you, I told you this neighborhood had standards, Piper, I said calmly, stepping between her and my family. Put that down. Don't tell me what to do on my street, she barked. You think you can just take over. You think you can ignore the rules. Mom, the kids, Samantha's voice cracked behind me. Inside. Now, I said quietly, not taking my eyes off Piper. Linda gathered the boys, ushering them through the sliding door. My heartbeat was so loud I could barely hear anything else. Piper's finger twitched near the trigger. I've called the police again, she shouted. Told them there's an armed intruder in the neighborhood. You won't talk your way out this time. I took a slow breath. Piper, you're pointing a gun at your neighbor. You're the one breaking the law now. Don't you dare lecture me, she screamed. This property doesn't even belong to you. The HOA never approved this sale. It's fraud. She climbed over the fence, actually climbed it, gripping the wood panels like a woman possessed. Her heel snapped, but she didn't care. She landed on our grass gun, still in hand, eyes wild. Linda gasped from behind the glass door. Sam was on the phone already, whispering to 911. I raised both hands slowly, palms out. All right, Piper. You've made your point. Everyone hears you. Now just put the gun down. She laughed a dry, bitter laugh that sent shivers down my spine. You think you can threaten me? I own this place. The HOA will take it back once they see what kind of people moved in. I'm not threatening you, I said softly, but I am warning you. Cameras are rolling. Everything you're doing right now is being recorded. That made her falter for a second. Her eyes darted toward the security camera above the patio. But then she raised the gun higher, pointing it straight at my chest. You're bluffing. Try me. Seconds felt like hours. The gun trembled in her hand. I could see the sweat on her forehead, the panic starting to eat through the rage. She wasn't thinking clearly, she was spiraling. Then the sirens started again. 3 police cruisers screeched into the cul-de-sac, the same ones as last time, like déjà vu, only now it was far more dangerous. Piper turned toward the sound, startled. The barrel wavered. I took a careful step forward, voice steady. It's over, Piper. Put it down. She whipped back toward me, finger tightening on the trigger. My stomach turned to ice. "Piper drop," the weapon shouted Officer Daniels as he sprinted through the gate. Behind him, Reyes and another officer raised their weapons. "Do it now." For one terrifying second, she didn't move. Then she shrieked, "He's trespassing, he's got a gun too," and pointed toward me. The officers froze their training, kicking in, but this time Daniels didn't fall for it. "Ma'am," he said sternly, "we've been here before. Lower your weapon now." She hesitated, trembling, then screamed again, "You don't understand. He's lying. He's dangerous." I spoke up, calm and clear. "Check the camera on the patio. Everything's recorded." "She broke into our property." Reyes moved around to the side, edging closer. "Ma'am, please don't make this worse." Her grip loosened. The gun sagged slightly. Then, as if realizing she was losing control, Piper's face twisted into fury again. "You people always get away with everything." "Not this time," I heard Linda gasp behind me. Reyes lunged forward. The gun went off a single deafening bang that echoed through the neighborhood. My ears rang. Birds exploded out of the nearby trees. The bullet hit the ground 2 feet in front of me, kicking up dirt and bits of grass. Piper screamed as Reyes tackled her to the ground. The gun skidded across the lawn. Daniels and the other officer rushed in, restraining her as she thrashed and shouted, "This isn't over, you'll regret this. I'm the real homeowner. He stole it from me." Daniels barked, "Ma'am, you are under arrest for trespassing, unlawful possession of a firearm, and assault with a deadly weapon." As they cuffed her, she kept shrieking wild, incoherent things about community integrity and protecting the neighborhood. Linda ran out, tears in her eyes, and wrapped her arms around me. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I said, voice shaking. "But I think she just ruined her life." Daniels approached, his tone softer now. "Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Brooks, I'm sorry you had to go through this again. We'll need to take your statement and the footage." "You'll have it," I said. "Every second's on camera." They led Piper away, still shouting, as the cuffs clicked tighter. "You'll see. They'll believe me. I am the HOA." The whole street watched from their porches, some filming, some whispering. For the first time, the mighty Piper Cox looked small, powerless, pathetic. After the cruisers pulled away, Officer Reyes lingered a moment. "You handled that incredibly well, Mr. Brooks," he said. "If you hadn't stayed calm, that could have gone differently." "I've lived long enough to know that anger only adds fuel," I replied. "Better to let the truth burn on its own." He nodded, gave a tight smile, and left. When the yard finally emptied, silence filled the space again. The smell of gunpowder still lingered faintly in the air. A small hole in the lawn marked where the bullet had hit, a reminder of how close chaos had come. Linda stared at it quietly. "She could have killed you, Kyle." "Yeah," I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "But she didn't." That night, after the kids went home and the adrenaline wore off, I sat by the pool looking at the rippling water. The reflections shimmered like ghosts. I replayed everything in my head, the rage in her eyes, the disbelief, the madness. What drives someone to that edge? Was it hate, control, fear of losing power, maybe all of the above? The next morning, reporters showed up at the gate. Word had spread fast: HOA president pulls gun on neighbor. The headline practically wrote itself. I refused to talk to them, but one of them shouted a question as they packed up. "Mr. Brooks, do you think she's dangerous?" I just looked at the camera and said, "I think some people mistake control for safety, and that's the most dangerous thing there is." Later that day, Officer Daniels called. They discovered that Piper's gun wasn't registered, and she didn't even have a firearm license. There would be serious charges: unlawful possession, reckless endangerment, hate crime allegations under review. When I hung up, Linda whispered, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" I looked out the window at her empty house. The blinds were drawn, her garden unwatered, the mailbox stuffed full of letters. "No," I said softly, "not the same way." But I had no idea the story wasn't finished yet, because while the police had taken Piper away that day, the real reckoning was still to come. 2 days after the shooting, the sound of silence around Willow Creek Estates was deafening. No lawnmowers, no kids riding bikes, not even the faint hum of sprinklers. It was as if the entire neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Linda and I spent that Monday morning replaying everything on the living room TV, not out of curiosity but necessity. The police had already taken copies, but I wanted to understand it myself, every second, every angle. The security cameras had caught everything. At 10:14 a.m., you could see Piper pacing in her yard, gun already in her hand. She looked like a storm, barely contained in a human body, muttering, checking her phone, then glancing over at our fence as if building up courage to do something unthinkable. At 10:16, she climbed. The footage from the side camera caught her heel, snapping her stumble, and the way she raised that gun with both hands. You could even see the expression on her face. Not fear, not confusion, conviction. She really believed she was in the right. Linda couldn't watch anymore. She turned away, tears pooling in her eyes. She would have killed you, Kyle. I nodded, pressing pause on the frame that showed the bullet striking the grass just feet from me. Yeah, and if it weren't for Reyes, she might have done it. I sent copies of the footage to my lawyer, Daniel Keene, a calm, sharp man in his 40s who'd handled HOA disputes for years. When he called later, his tone was grim. This isn't just harassment anymore, Mr. Brooks, he said. This is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And based on what I've reviewed, there's a clear racial component. We're filing this as a hate crime. I exhaled slowly. I'm not after revenge, Daniel. I just want it to stop, and it will, he assured. But you need to see this through. For your safety and everyone else's. That afternoon, the police returned for follow-up statements. Officer Daniels came in, first hat in hand, expression weary. Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Brooks, we owe you an apology, he said sincerely. We should have recognized how serious her behavior was the first time. It's not on you, I said. You handled it when it counted. Daniels nodded. Still, it bothers me. You two were just trying to live your lives, and she decided she was judge, jury, and executioner. We've dealt with her before, but nothing like this. Reyes joined him, setting down a tablet. We ran her firearm serial number, he said. It's unregistered. Not only that, the gun's been linked to a prior domestic complaint from 6 years ago. Her husband Greg reported she'd threatened him during an argument, but the case was dropped. Linda looked stunned. So this wasn't the first time Reyes shook his head. No, ma'am. Seems like it was only a matter of time. Greg Cox had disappeared since the arrest. His car was gone, mailbox overflowing, blinds drawn tight. Some neighbors whispered he'd left town for good. By Wednesday, the police wrapped up their investigation, and the district attorney's office announced that Piper was being charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, criminal trespassing, filing a false police report unlawful, possession of a firearm. And under review, hate crime enhancement, the news spread faster than a wildfire. Within hours, local stations had the headline plastered everywhere: HOA president pulls gun on neighbor in dispute over pool entire incident caught on camera. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, reporters, even strangers reached out. One message read, "Thank you for standing your ground. People like her need to be held accountable." Another simply said, "That could have been me." It hit me then this wasn't just my story anymore. It was something bigger: how power, prejudice, and paranoia can turn a neighborhood into a battlefield. That night, Linda and I sat by the pool again. The same water that had nearly become my grave now shimmered peacefully under the porch lights. "She's probably sitting in a cell right now," Linda said quietly. "Do you think she understands what she did?" I shook my head. "People like Piper never think they're wrong. She'll convince herself she was protecting something, her status, her street, maybe even her pride, but not the truth." A few days later, we received a call from Officer Daniels. "She's insisting on pressing charges against you, Mr. Brooks," he said, half laughing. "Claims you threatened her with surveillance equipment." "I'm not kidding." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Threatened her with a camera, what I do, blind her with 4K resolution," Daniels laughed softly. "Don't worry. The DA's already dismissed it. She's in deep." But deep wasn't the word for it, she was sinking. At the preliminary hearing, the courtroom was tense. Piper looked smaller now, sitting behind the defense table in a gray blazer and handcuffs. The confidence that once defined her was gone. Her lawyer tried to argue mental distress, claiming she'd acted out of fear due to recent break-ins in the neighborhood. When it was my turn to testify, I kept my tone even. "She didn't act out of fear," I said. "She acted out of hate and entitlement. She thought she could decide who belonged." Then the prosecutor played the footage. The entire room fell silent except for Piper's voice screaming, "This property doesn't belong to you, Judge Thompson." A tall man with a calm but commanding presence leaned forward. "Mrs. Cox, did you or did you not climb the fence onto Mr. Brooks's property with a loaded weapon?" Her voice cracked. "I was protecting my community." The judge's tone sharpened. "By threatening a man on his own property, while lying to 911 Mrs. Cox, you've endangered lives." The verdict was swift guilty on multiple counts. Piper's sentence wasn't long: 6 months of community service, mandatory psychiatric counseling, and 3 years probation, but it was enough to strip away her last bit of power. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. "Mr. Brooks, how do you feel about the sentence?" I looked straight into the camera. "Justice isn't about punishment, it's about prevention. I hope she gets help. But I also hope people realize cameras don't lie, and neither does hate." That night, Linda and I toasted with a glass of wine. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "Maybe," I replied. "But part of me Wishes it never had to come to this. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the police department, an official thank you for my cooperation, along with a note from Officer Reyes. Because of your footage, several neighbors have come forward about her harassment. You might have saved someone else's life. Reading that made my chest tighten. All the fear, frustration, sleepless nights, maybe they meant something after all. Still, some nights I'd wake up at 3 a.m., hearing echoes of her voice, "You don't belong here." It wasn't just what she said, it was what it meant. The idea that people like Piper Cox existed everywhere, hiding behind HOA rules, ready to weaponize authority to feed their hate. But now I had something stronger than her rules, evidence, and the courage to use it. That weekend, I installed one final camera, not for safety this time, but for peace of mind. I pointed it toward the gate where the police had taken her away. Then I sat back on the porch, coffee in hand, and smiled. For the first time since we moved in, I didn't feel watched. I felt free. But deep down, I knew the story of Piper Cox wasn't truly over yet. People like her rarely fade quietly into the background. And as it turned out, fate had one last surprise for both of us, a twist that would turn closure into something much more complicated. By the time autumn rolled around, Willow Creek Estates had started to feel normal again. Leaves were turning, amber kids were decorating for Halloween, and the echo of sirens had faded into memory. The neighbors, once tense and silent, were suddenly friendly, waving when I walked by, stopping for small talk about football or gardening. Funny how quickly people rediscover their manners once the neighborhood tyrant is gone. But peace always has a fragile heartbeat. It started with the rumors. At first, I ignored them whispers that Piper Cox was back in town, that she'd been seen walking near the park in her community service vest, picking up trash along the jogging trail. Then someone claimed they saw her car, the white Lexus with the HOA decal still on the bumper, parked near the entrance of the neighborhood late at night. Probably just gossip, Linda said, folding laundry. She's on probation. She can't come within 200 yards of us. I know, I said. But people like Piper don't take exile kindly. Still, I shrugged it off. The cameras were still up, the locks were solid, and life was good again. The days filled with laughter with Samantha and the grandkids visiting, often the boys calling the pool Grandpa's fortress. For once that fortress felt secure. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Thursday morning, no return address, written in looping cursive on thick paper that smelled faintly of cheap perfume. Dear Mr. Brooks, I've had time to reflect on everything that happened. I realize my actions may have seemed extreme, but I only ever wanted to protect our community. I hope we can talk. Piper Linda found it before I did. Her face turned pale as she handed it over. She's not supposed to contact you, Kyle. I know, I muttered. This violates her probation. I called Officer Daniels immediately. He came by that afternoon, his brow furrowed as he examined the letter. Yeah, that's her handwriting, he said. We'll add it to her record. Could be nothing, but we'll make sure she's reminded of the court order. Reminded, I repeated. Daniels, she aimed a gun at me. A reminder doesn't sound strong enough. He gave a weary smile. I get it. But the system works in steps. The important thing is, she's being watched. Still that night I couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the windows, the security lights flickered as leaves drifted across the sensors, and every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. The next morning I walked to the mailbox and froze. Taped to the metal door was another note written in the same sharp cursive. Your cameras can't see everything. That was it. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. My stomach twisted. I scanned the street, half expecting to see her watching from somewhere. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of suburban life pretending everything was fine. I showed the note to Linda. She wanted to pack up and leave right then and there, but I wasn't running, not again. She wants to scare us, I said, tearing the note in half. And she's not going to win this time. That weekend, I invited Tom Parker and 2 other neighbors over. We talked about forming an informal neighborhood watch, not an official HOA thing, just a group of people who actually cared about safety. Tom, always blunt, said, "It's funny, isn't it? Took a gun and a court case for folks to realize the HOA was never keeping us safe." Yeah, I said, control and safety aren't the same thing. We installed extra lighting along the street corners, coordinated camera coverage, and set up a shared alert system. For the first time, the neighborhood actually worked together. Ironically, Piper's madness had done what years of HOA meetings never could. It made people care. Then 2 weeks later, the reckoning arrived. A knock on the door, firm, heavy, unmistakably official. When I opened it, Officer Reyes stood there, his expression grave. "Mr. Brooks, we've located Mrs. Cox. She's in custody again." Linda exhaled in relief. Thank God. What did she do this time? Reyes hesitated. We found her parked near the gated entrance of Willow Creek after midnight. She claimed she was checking on her property. When officers approached, they discovered another firearm in her glove compartment. I blinked. You're kidding. No, sir. This one was legally registered to her husband, Greg. He told us she stole it from him. Linda shook her head, voice trembling. That poor man. Reyes sighed. We think she'd been living out of her car the past few weeks, driving around at night watching houses. She had printed photos of several properties in her back seat, yours included. That hit like a punch to the chest. So she was planning something, we don't know yet, Reyes said. But the DA is adding stalking charges. Given her previous record, she's likely facing jail time now, not just community service. When he left, Linda sank onto the couch, tears in her eyes. I just don't understand, Kyle. How do you get from enforcing lawn rules to this? I sat beside her, staring out the window at the shimmering pool. Some people mistake power for purpose. When you take it away, they don't know who they are anymore. Over the next few days, the story made local headlines again. HOA woman arrested again, accused of stalking former neighbor. The news crew returned to our street, but I refused to comment this time. The world didn't need more spectacle. Still, I attended her sentencing, not out of revenge, but out of closure. In the courtroom, Piper looked older. The arrogance was gone, her eyes were hollow. Greg sat in the back, hands clasped, not meeting her gaze. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, she stood slowly, voice trembling. I was trying to protect something, she said. All my life, I've built order, I just wanted people to follow it. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of what I was protecting. Judge Thompson leaned forward. You weren't protecting Mrs. Cox. You were persecuting. Her sentence came swift and final, 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation, mandatory psychiatric treatment. The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as deputies led her away. She turned once, meeting my eyes briefly, and for the first time I didn't see anger there. I saw fear, maybe even regret. Afterward, Greg approached me outside. His voice was low, shaky. Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry for everything. I tried to stop her. She wasn't always like that. I believe you, I said. I hope she gets the help she needs. He nodded slowly, eyes glistening, before walking away down the courthouse steps. When I got home that evening, Linda had dinner ready, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, her comfort meal of choice. As we ate, she asked, Do you think it's really over now? I looked at the flickering candlelight, then out the window toward Piper's dark, empty house. Maybe for us, I said, but for her, I think it's just beginning. Weeks passed, and life returned to something resembling peace. The HOA finally replaced Piper with a new president, a quiet woman named Marcy Bennett, who preferred book clubs to bylaws. She stopped by one afternoon with a basket of muffins and a genuine smile. We just want everyone to get along again, she said. For the first time, I believed it might actually be possible. But there was one moment that stuck with me. A few days after the sentencing, I was pruning the roses by the front walk when a delivery van stopped by the curb. The driver handed me a small box with no sender listed. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Thank you for telling the truth. I'm sorry. PC. There was no address, no signature beyond the initials. Just that short message. Linda wanted to throw it away, but I tucked it into the back of my desk drawer instead. Not as a keepsake, but as a reminder that even in the ugliest storms, people are capable of realizing what they've done. That night I poured a drink, went outside and sat by the pool again. The reflection of the stars danced on the water's surface, calm and unbroken. It felt like the first real peace I'd had in years. Justice hadn't just punished the problem, it had restored something deeper, the idea that even when madness takes root in the quietest neighborhoods, truth can still bloom louder than fear. Winter crept into Willow Creek Estates. Like a slow exhale, the air crisp, the lawns pale, and the neighborhood finally quiet. No more shouting across fences, no fake violation slips, no flashing police lights in the cul-de-sac. For the first time since Linda and I had moved in, our mornings were truly silent, peaceful, real. It took a while to believe it wasn't just the calm before another storm. For months, I still found myself checking the cameras every night before bed, scanning every shadow like a man haunted by ghosts that refused to leave. But as the days passed and nothing happened, those ghosts began to fade. One Saturday morning, Linda and I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. The sun had just risen, painting everything in warm gold, and a light frost sparkled on the grass. We passed Piper's old house, now sold to a young couple with a baby on the way. The new owners had repainted it pale blue, planted sunflowers along the walkway, and replaced her infamous HOA president sign with a cheerful wreath that said, Welcome, friends, Linda smiled. Can you believe that used to be her kingdom? I chuckled. Yeah, hard to picture now. Feels like a different lifetime. And maybe it was. Most of the neighbors had returned to normal life. The Parkers still brought pie, the Miller's kids still lost their soccer balls in our yard, and even the HOA had turned human again. Marcy Bennett, the new president, was everything Piper wasn't: calm, compassionate, and reasonable. She organized a small holiday gathering that December, complete with cocoa Christmas lights and 0 lectures about property codes. During the event, she pulled me aside and said, "Kyle, I just wanted to thank you. I know what you went through wasn't fair, but because of you, the community's better now. People talk to each other again." I smiled. "That's kind of you, Marcy. I just told the truth." She shook her head. "You did more than that. You showed everyone what accountability looks like." Her words lingered with me, but deep down there was still a part of me that wondered about Piper, whether she was still behind bars, whether she was getting the help she clearly needed. I didn't hate her, not anymore. Hate is heavy, and I'd carried it long enough. What I felt now was pity. Then one cold afternoon in late February, something unexpected arrived in the mail. A formal envelope stamped with the County Department of Corrections seal. Inside was a short letter, typed neatly, but with a faint signature scrawled at the bottom. "Mr. Brooks, I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say thank you for not seeking vengeance. I've spent the last few months realizing that I built my identity on control, not community. You didn't just expose my actions, you forced me to see myself. I've started therapy. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Piper Cox." I stared at the letter for a long time, unsure what to feel. Relief, vindication, sadness. Maybe a strange mix of all three. I handed it to Linda, who read it quietly, before saying, "Maybe that's the closest thing to peace you'll ever get from her." "Maybe," I said softly, folding it carefully and placing it in the same drawer where I'd kept her last note. That night, as snow began to fall outside, I poured 2 mugs of hot cocoa and joined Linda on the porch. The world looked softer under the white, forgiving even. "You ever think we were meant to move here?" she asked suddenly. "Like this house, all this chaos? Maybe it had a purpose?" I looked at her and smiled. "You mean, was I destined to become the neighborhood's accidental activist?" She laughed. "Something like that." I thought about it. About how one stubborn man and one broken woman had somehow dragged a quiet community out of its complacency. About how fear and hatred could grow unchecked behind white fences and manicured lawns until someone finally shone a light on it. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Maybe this was supposed to happen. Maybe it was never about her or me. Maybe it was about everyone watching, realizing that silence lets people like her win." Linda rested her head on my shoulder. The snow kept falling, and for the first time in months, I felt completely at ease. A few weeks later, I ran into Officer Reyes at the grocery store. He looked more relaxed than the last time I'd seen him, younger somehow. "Mr. Brooks," he said, shaking my hand. "How's retired life treating you now that you're not dodging bullets in your own backyard?" I laughed. "It's a lot quieter thanks to you guys." He grinned. "You know, Piper's due for release in the spring. She's under strict supervision, can't come anywhere near this area. But word is, she's doing well in therapy. Maybe she'll finally learn what community means." "Let's hope so," I said, though I think this place learned it before she did. On my way home, I passed by the local park and something made me pull over. Across the field, a group of volunteers were planting trees wearing bright orange vests. For a split second, I saw a figure that looked like Piper, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. Either way, I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Some stories end with punishment, others end with forgiveness. But this one, I realized, ended with balance. That evening, as the sun dipped low over the neighborhood, I walked out to the pool, the same pool that had once been the epicenter of chaos. The water was still reflecting the pink-orange sky like glass. I dipped my hand and letting the cold ripple outward. Everything felt full circle. Linda joined me, wrapping her arm around my waist. "You know," she said, "this pool nearly got you killed." I smiled. "And now it's just water again. That's the funny thing about peace. It always looks ordinary when it's real." She rested her head on my shoulder. "So what now, Mr. Brooks?" "Now," I said, gazing across the quiet street. "Now I just live. And maybe if we're lucky, we make sure no one ever lets another HOA queen turn power into poison again." We stood there until the sun disappeared, our reflections fading into the water's dark surface. The house behind us glowed with warmth, laughter, and light, everything we'd fought to protect. Life in a neighborhood or anywhere isn't about rules, lawns, or property lines. It's about respect. about knowing that a community only works when people see each other as equals, not enemies. Piper Cox thought power would earn her respect. But real respect isn't forced. It's earned through kindness, fairness, and humility. If this story taught me anything, it's that silence in the face of injustice is its own kind of crime. Sometimes standing your ground doesn't mean fighting with fists or fury. It means staying calm, collecting truth, and trusting that light always exposes darkness. So wherever you're watching from, tell me, have you ever dealt with a Piper in your life? Someone who tried to control what wasn't theirs? Drop your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just prove again that karma never skips a fence.